that video, send it by WhatsApp. Do you have it, Susan? No, Susan, I don't know whether she's in.
Yeah, I'm here. Let me check.
You have access to your WhatsApp?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, open up that video by Kevin Hall. If not, I'll go to YouTube and find it. Okay. That video is a bit long, it's about 43 minutes. But we can watch maybe the first 30 minutes of it. So, unlike when you're watching that video, everyone should listen carefully to what Kevin Hall is saying. Kevin is describing Gitcoin 2.0, the second version of Gitcoin. And he has a lot of important material to share how he built it, so we can learn a lot about it. The description a bit technical, but what we are doing here is quite technical. It's good for people to learn. So meanwhile, I'll be going to YouTube.
Hi, Doc.
Sorry?
I can't find the video. You sent it today?
I sent it today. Okay.
I can't find it in my WhatsApp.
No, it's not your WhatsApp, in the team.
Oh,
okay. Into the team folder.
Linda, can you be able to access it? I'll have now to send it from my phone.
Yeah, it's in the team, yeah.
Can you share?
Let me see, yeah.
Yeah, hello, I can share the video.
Yeah, Freedom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, now, okay. Now, are you able to start streaming?
Yeah, it's already streaming. So I'll share the video by Kevin.
Okay, the one you sent the team. Okay. Go ahead.
So basically what Gitcoin's trying to do is we're trying to build the ultimate capital allocation and allow people to deploy these tokenized treasuries to allocate them to fund what matters in their communities. We're seeing a lot of adoption by L2s and LSTs and projects that want to use Gitcoin grants, the power of Gitcoin grants tokens in their own communities. Gitcoin's flagship product over the years has been this thing called quadratic funding. And the reason why quadratic funding is powerful is also one of its vulnerabilities. As we increase the cost of forgery for attackers, we accidentally increase the cost for real users to verify their identity with Gitcoin Passport.
Welcome to Epicenter, the show which talks about the technologies, projects, and people driving decentralization and the blockchain revolution. I'm Friederike Ernst, and today I'm speaking with Kevin Owocki, who is the founder of Gitcoin, a grant distribution project originally on Ethereum and now on a whole lot of other chains as well. Before we talk with Kevin about Gitcoin 2.0, let me tell you about our sponsors this week.
This episode is brought to you by Gnosis. Gnosis builds decentralized infrastructure for the Ethereum ecosystem. With a rich history dating back to 2015 and products like Safe, CowSwap, or Gnosis Chain, Gnosis combines needs-driven development with deep technical expertise. This year marks the launch of Gnosis Pay, the world's first decentralized payment network. With the Gnosis card, you can spend self-custody crypto at any Visa-accepting merchant around the world. If you're an individual looking to live more on-chain, or a business looking to white-label the stack, visit GnosisPay.com. There are lots of ways you can join the Gnosis journey. GNO token and low-cost hardware, or deploy your product on the EVM-compatible and highly decentralized Gnosis chain. Get started today at gnosis.io.
Chorus One is one of the biggest node operators globally and help you stake your tokens on 45 plus networks like Ethereum, Cosmos, Celestia, and DYDX. More than 100,000 delegators stake with Chorus One, including institutions like BitGo and Ledger. Staking with Chorus One not only gets you the highest yields, but also the most robust security practices and infrastructure that are usually exclusive for institutions. You can stake directly to Chorus One's public node from your wallet, set up a white label node, or use the recently launched product, Opus, to stake up to 8,000 ETH in a single transaction. You can even offer high-yield staking to your own customers using their API. Your assets always remain in your custody, so you can have complete peace of mind. Start staking today at Chorus.one. Kevin, you've been on Epicenter before. Welcome back.
So glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Cool. It's been a while since you've been on, I think like 2 or 3 years. So give us your and Gitcoin's backstory in a nutshell.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the cool things about having been in the space for the last 7 years, and I think this is my third Epicenter episode, is that I actually, the first Epicenter episode I did was within a month of the launch of Gitcoin Grants, which has been the platform that has helped the Ethereum community fund $60 million worth of open source software and public goods for the Ethereum community. And that was January 2019 that we launched Gitcoin 1.0, and that was about the time that I appeared on Epicenter the first time. Over the last couple of years, we have been progressively decentralizing Gitcoin, and I'm here today to talk about the Gitcoin 2.0 white paper, which outlines our vision for a decentralized Gitcoin. So hopefully taking the power of Gitcoin Grants and that $60 million worth of Ethereum public goods that have been funded on the platform and putting in the power of any community that is based on top of the EVM. So progressively decentralizing and progressively having more impact over time.
Perfect. We'll talk about all of that in just a little bit. Gitcoin leadership has kind of changed somewhat over the years, so I know you were gone for at least a little bit. So what's your current involvement?
So my current title is co-founder, and I am acting CTO of Grants Lab, which is the organization that is pushing forward the software development at the Gitcoin DAO. Gitcoin, as I said in the intro, has been progressively decentralizing over time. In 2021, when the Gitcoin DAO launched, we launched the GTC token, and and that was sort of like a transfer of power from at the time Gitcoin was a corporation and I was the CEO of it. So all of the decisions sort of rolled up to me. And when it became a DAO, the decisions transferred over to the token holders who were ultimately responsible for the fate. And as part of the transfer of power, our legal team felt that it was necessary for me to disaffiliate from the project for at least a little while. And I think I was in total disaffiliated for 15 or 16 months. During that time, I was working on a project called Super Modular, which basically at the time we thought that we would the setup would be similar to how the Ethereum Foundation builds the Ethereum protocol, and Consensus, Joe Lubin's startup, builds things on top of it, things like MetaMask or Gnosis. That was kind of the setup between the Gitcoin DAO and Super Modular. Super Modular was building software in the Gitcoin ecosystem, and Gitcoin was building the core protocols, which makes me, I guess, like 1/1000th of a Joe Lubin. But we were just building stuff in the Gitcoin ecosystem for a couple of years, and after that time, I ended up reaffiliating with the project as of, I think it was September of 2023. And I'm glad to be back in the fold and helping push the core protocol forward. We're seeing a lot of adoption by L2s and LSTs and projects that want to use Gitcoin grants, the power of Gitcoin grants in their own communities. So it's quite an interesting time to be helping people fund what matters in their communities, because lots of people with tokenized treasuries that are trying to build active communities around them.
I have to admit that last time I tried participating in a funding round, and I've participated in many, many, many funding rounds because you've had like 20 or something, right? I must admit I gave up. I didn't make it. I did not actually make any contributions at all. I think it was like in the late summer or fall last year. And I failed at authenticating enough ways to kind of get a Gitcoin passport or something that wasn't necessary to kind of contribute earlier. Tell us about the Gitcoin passport and why you felt it needed to be introduced. And I know this wasn't just me. So basically, I know lots of other people kind of seem to have the same problem on Twitter, at least.
Sure. Yeah, well, certainly value your honest feedback. In the road to progressive decentralization has not been without setbacks, and sometimes there have been many. Happy to talk about any and all of them. So basically, Gitcoin's flagship product over the years has been this thing called quadratic funding. And the reason why quadratic funding is powerful is also one of its vulnerabilities. And quadratic funding is a mechanism invented by Glenn Weil from Microsoft, Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, and Zoe Hitzig. And basically the way it works is that, Friederike, if you have a grant that raises $100 for $100 from 100 contributors, and I have a grant that raises $100 from one contributor, you're going to get 99% of the matching pool, because we're trying to fund what matters to a broad swath of the Ethereum community. So that's really powerful, because it means that lots of people will come out of the woodwork to contribute to these grants, because even giving $1 can get matched with tens or hundreds of dollars from the matching pool, depending on how big the matching pool is and how many other contributors there are to the grant. Okay, so that's really powerful. We're pushing power to the edges of the Ethereum community by funding with quadratic funding. But that power is also a drawback. Okay, so the vulnerability in this, and since your listeners are in the Ethereum community, I'm assuming they're adversarial thinkers. If I have $100 to my grant with only one contributor, and you have $100 to your grant with 100 contributors, and you're getting 99% of the matching pool, I have a rational incentive to make up 100 different identities in order to contribute to my grant and get more of the matching pool. So that's what's called a Sybil attack. It's a sock puppet attack. And that's why we've introduced Gitcoin Passport into the system, to allow people to verify their identity and increase the cost of forgery so that your identity cannot be falsified. Now, the problem that we ran into, and keep in mind, this is all like live beta software, we're kind of trying to figure it out as we go along, is that as we increase the cost of forgery for attackers, we accidentally increase the cost for real users to verify their identity with Gitcoin Passport. And not only do we have to walk this line where we make the system not Sybil, we have to make the system Sybil resistant, but we have to make it privacy preserving, and we have to lower the friction for end users. So that's a little bit about why Passport exists and the problem that we are trying to solve. And the thing I'll say is that the Passport team has heard everyone's feedback loud and clear, and they are working on a no friction way of verifying Sybil resistance. I can get into that if it's interesting to your listeners, but GG20, Gitcoin Grants 20, is coming up in April, and I would encourage everyone who gave up during Gitcoin 19 or Gitcoin 18 to give it another try, because we've been putting a lot of work into making the friction way less for people, and I'll be curious to hear if it paid off. The nice thing about Gitcoin Grants is that we run 20 rounds, and it's an iteration every single round. We take the feedback from our community and the feedback from Vitalik and other game theorists and try to fold it into the next iteration of Gitcoin Grants. So it's a deeply iterative evolutionary experiment, and we value your feedback because it helps us make it suck less next time.
Tell us what you've changed to make it less painful.
Yeah, so there's two things. They're both really data science heavy. So we've been investing in some like PhD level data scientists to, number one, there's a stamp called the ETH stamp, which basically goes out and uses a lot of complicated data analysis and machine learning to look at all the on-chain signals behind your address and to figure out if you're a Sybil attacker or not. So like something that algorithm would find is that if there's 100 accounts that are all funded by the same account, that's probably a Sybil attacker. That's probably someone who's just gassing up a bunch of different accounts so that they can Sybil attack Gitcoin Grants. So for the end user, that is a just one-click connect and sign your message in order to get above the matching threshold on Gitcoin Grants to get that stamp. And before. You tell me what your experience was in GG19 or GG20, but before you would have to go through and click a bunch of stamps in order to get up to the threshold, and now it should just be a couple of clicks using that machine learning algorithm. And then the second thing that I just want to talk about really quickly is this new algorithm that it was invented by Joel Miller, who is a data scientist on the Gitcoin team, called cluster mapping. And basically what cluster mapping does is it's a way of clustering contributors who contribute to the same grants together and treating them as though they're the same identity. And so basically, if someone's Sybil attacking a Gitcoin grant and they make up 100 new accounts and all those 100 accounts only contribute to the same Gitcoin grant, for the purposes of the QF algorithm, they are just one identity. And basically, if I was a Sybil attacker trying to attack Gitcoin grants, then I would have to contribute to a bunch of other grants in order to make my identities unique and uncluster them from each other. And basically what this does is it takes the energy of the attackers, the funding of the attackers, and makes sure that they're funding a bunch of public goods on Gitcoin in order to attack the system. So it kind of takes, like Karate Kid style, takes your opponent's momentum and uses it against them in a way. So in sum, cluster mapping and the ETH stamp are the two ways that we're really reducing friction using cutting-edge data science behind the scenes in order to prevent Sybil and collusion attacks on QF, but also keeping the user friction low.
I totally understand the approach. Is there a way to kind of escalate this if I feel misclassified? So say, for instance, I told my 50 friends that they should definitely give to, say, Rotke. And they do, but they only give to Rotke. So basically there's like 50 people who only give to Rotke because I told them there's a fantastic project, please give to it. Can I then kind of escalate the fact that kind of they were kind of, so to say, disqualified from the matching pool?
Yeah, so I mean, the first method of feedback is contacting the Gitcoin support. So in the bottom right of your browser window, you can chat with someone on the Gitcoin support team and just say, hey, I don't agree with this, or hey, here's my feedback. Your UX sucks in this browser combination, Web3 login combination. That's the first layer. The second layer is that you can go to gov.gitcoin.co and you can escalate it to the DAO governance structures. So this is all transparent political economy happening out in the open. And if you're not happy with the way things that are working, then that's another way to escalate things. And then, the third way is just complaining on Twitter. I know that Gitcoin has had some missteps in the last year and a half, and I'm partially responsible for that as the founder. And we listen to all that feedback. And Gitcoin is, like I said, iterative and evolutionary. And your complaining helps make Gitcoin Grants 21 better. So please tell us through any of those channels when you don't like what you're seeing.
Perfect. So maybe let's back up a little bit. Why is capital allocation a difficult problem that kind of needs this level of infrastructure to tackle?
I think that what we're seeing in 2024 is really quite interesting. We've got thousands of DAOs or tokenized communities that have tens or hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars of capital in their treasury. And they all want to build ecosystems around their software stack. And so, Justin Drake was just on a Bankless episode in which he was talking to David about how, like, the L2 meta, how L2s are competing with each other. And he said that L2s are going to compete for liquidity and on infrastructure and on sequencers and on tooling and on public goods. And, like the one change I would say to what Justin said is that public goods are the way that you get all of those other things in your ecosystem. So if you can solve the problem of capital allocation, you can invite the builders into your ecosystem to build tooling, to build infrastructure, to build liquidity. And so basically what Gitcoin's trying to do is we're trying to build the ultimate capital allocation engine for these ecosystems and allow people to deploy these tokenized treasuries to allocate them to fund what matters in their communities. So basically the problem of capital allocation is how do we fund what matters in these communities? How do we run quadratic funding rounds that help incentivize the outer ring of builders in your community? How do we run retroactive public goods funding rounds in order to incentivize communities in order to add value to them? So I think that, like, the immediate answer in the crypto space is, like, the most effective tactic available if you're competing as an L2 or an LST or an LRT or a DeFi project is to build a community of hackers that are in the orbit of your ecosystem. And so, that's the near-term goal for Gitcoin Grants, is to help these communities fund what matters to them in the near future. Now, I think in 10 or 20 years, we're going to take the tools that we have pioneered in the crypto space, we and others have pioneered in the crypto space, and we're going to take them mainstream. And in 10 or 20 years, I would love to live in a world in which local towns in cities and states are running retroactive public goods funding rounds and quadratic funding rounds using tools that were pioneered in the crypto space. I think we can do better capital allocation using blockchains than was possible in the old world. We now can do scalable and precise capital allocation without intermediaries. We can do more democratic capital allocation than was possible before. And to me, that's the true purpose of crypto, is removing intermediaries and helping people get funding for doing good in their communities. So near-term answer, we're going to help arm people who are building EVM-based communities. But long-term, it's about helping the world fund its public goods and helping the world allocate capital in a democratic way.
Cool. You talked about quadratic funding earlier, where kind of the impact your vote has depends on the square root of how much you're giving. You also mentioned retroactive public goods funding right now. Can you briefly explain what that is?
Yeah, sure. So, but just to zoom out a little bit, one way that we describe Gitcoin 1.0 is like Gitcoin 1.0 is like a screwdriver. It only did quadratic funding. Gitcoin 2.0 is like a multi-tool. It's going to do quadratic funding. It already does quadratic funding. It does retroactive public goods funding. It does direct grants. It does all these different flavors of funding. So
talk us through all of the flavors that you support now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you asked about retroactive public goods funding, so I'll start with that. Gitcoin has I've been working with the Optimism community in order to build a tool called EasyRetroPGF.xyz. And that's basically the same voting interface that Optimism uses for retroactive public goods funding in their community. Retroactive public goods funding, as your listeners may know, is based off of the idea that it's easier to fund things that have had an impact in the past than it is to speculate about which things will have impact in the future, because you have all the data available about what's actually done good in these communities. So basically, using retroactive public goods funding, you set up a system of badge holders who are community members who are highly regarded in the community, have good judgment, and have about 3 to 5 hours per quarter in order to allocate capital to what has done good in the past. And so Optimism has been pioneering the retroactive public goods funding space within the Ethereum ecosystem. And we've partnered with them to make their flavor of capital allocation available to any other DAO in the EVM space that wants to do retroactive public goods funding. So we've got our first pilot of easyretropgf.xyz available coming up in the next month. That'll be in April. And we're working with, I think I can say this on air, but Filecoin, Pocket, Cello, in order to run retro PGF rounds in their community. So yeah, I just want your listeners to I just want to drill in on this point. Gitcoin 1.0 is just QF. Gitcoin 2.0 is many different flavors of capital allocation, and QF and retro PGF are two of the ones that we're most excited about right now. Happy to go into the others or to take questions about retro PGF.
Yeah. One question about retro PGF before we kind of go into the others. So you said that you have to define a set of people who are allowed to kind of make allocations or kind of vote on kind of what should receive funding. Why do you have to do that for PGF and not for quadratic funding?
Yeah, so we're kind of almost mixing two things. The prospect of retroactive versus prospective funding is just sort of a spectrum of, are you funding things that were only good in the past, or are you funding things that are good in the past and in the future? So that's one spectrum. And then another spectrum is the allow list, who gets to vote. And in quadratic funding, there's this it's actually pretty radical to think anyone in the community can vote with their dollars or their ETH that they bring. Whereas retroactive public goods funding is a little bit less democratic, and it's a little bit more technocratic. So basically, you assign a badge holder, someone in your community that's well regarded and well informed, that gets to vote. And I kind of think of this as a spectrum of on the left hand side, if it's just the core team and the founders that get to decide who allocates capital, well, that's completely technocratic and sort of insular, and no one gets to decide. And badge holders are just a way for communities to slowly dole out that responsibility to their most trusted community members. And what I think we're going to see with retroactive public goods funding is communities that have had direct grants programs, and maybe there's a grants administrator who's become a power broker in their community, start to be able to dole out and progressively decentralize that responsibility, but also that power to their community, until you start to reach out and have what Optimism has, which is hundreds of badge holders who are making decisions. And then, I think the ultimate destination looks a little bit more like QF, where maybe you'll have thousands of badge holders that are making decisions about funding what matters. So it's about progressively decentralizing that power. So when we talk about the difference between QF and retro PGF, I think people get a little bit tripped up, because we're actually traversing two different spectrums of the design space. The first is retroactive versus proactive, and the second is how technocratic versus democratic is the vote. And, capital allocation is a design space. There's going to be many dots along this design space. Those just happen to be two that the community is exploring right now.
Yeah, super interesting. And what are the other capital allocation schemes that you have integrated into Gitcoin 2.0?
So I want to be very clear about what exists right now and then what exists in the future, because I think a lot of one of the radical things we did with the Gitcoin 2.0 white paper is we didn't write the Gitcoin 2.0 white paper and then say, hey, we're going to build it over the next 5 years. This stuff is live already. So we've got direct grants, which is just plain simple vanilla grants. You can go out and a grant administrator can run an on-chain grant program. We've got quadratic funding, which is what Gitcoin's historically known for. We've got retroactive public goods funding. That's already live. And then we've got conviction voting pilot that we're working on with OneHive. So basically conviction voting is sort of an interesting way of doing capital allocation in which you stake governance tokens, and then you can remove money from the treasury the more governance tokens have been staked and the longer they've been staked. And then we've got a capital allocation mechanism called streaming quadratic funding, which is a partnership between GeoWeb and Superfluid and Gitcoin, in which basically instead of funding public goods quadratically for 2 weeks per quarter, you can have an always-on stream of revenue that is being continuously allocated to different grants in your ecosystem. So those are the 5 that exist right now: direct grants, quadratic funding, conviction voting, retro PGF, and streaming QF. We've got a roadmap of around a dozen other mechanisms that we want to build into the Gitcoin toolbox into the future. And, like I said, this is all in service of helping communities fund what matters. We see a future in which communities are going to be funding their ecosystem in a plurality of different mechanisms. And we think these mechanisms are all complementary with each other. I think that the most effective tactic for someone launching an EVM-based community in the next cycle is going to be not just having a regular grants program, but also doing QF and retro PGF and conviction voting all together. And yeah, so the vision is basically to have an ecosystem of capital allocation that funds your community in complementary ways to just your existing direct grants program.
Can you give examples of where you think each of these schemes will be particularly effective? Because if they're all about the same, you wouldn't need so many, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. The word scheme makes me feel a little bit dirty because a lot of these things are deeply rooted in game theory. But yeah, just to answer your question, quadratic funding is really good at democratic capital allocation and invites people on the outer edges of your community to fund what matters to them. Retroactive public goods funding is really good at progressively decentralizing the responsibility from a centralized grant administrator to a group of trusted community members, and then eventually many more of your community members to fund what matters to them. Conviction voting is really good at creating bottoms-up momentum in your community to help people fund the public goods that matter to them. And, if a normal governance proposal or process takes, hours to write the grant proposal, and then it takes all of the token holders to vote on it, and in some it spends 100 hours of token holder attention, conviction voting is really nice because you're not doing $1 million grants with hundreds of hours of attention. You're doing like a $500 slush fund for a party that someone in your community wants to host, and they only have to stake thousands of their governance tokens in order to pull it out. So it's like a very bottoms up way of doing capital allocation. So I think these things are all good at, like, it's the analogy of a multi-tool I think really works. Like, for the same reason that scissors and a Phillips head screwdriver and pliers solve different problems around the house, each of these capital allocation tools solve different ways of doing capital allocation in your community that are all complementary to each other. So I think of it as like a multi-tool or like a toolbox of different tools that complement each other.
Cool. You were just talking about staking the token that's relevant for that community. You guys also have your own token that you briefly alluded to earlier. What is that used for?
Yep. So GTC is the Gitcoin token, and GTC stands for Gitcoin, or I like to say that it stands for Govern the Community. It's a governance token, and basically it's a fork of Uni, which itself is a fork of Compound. Using GTC, any token holders can delegate their governance power to a member of the community that's more active than them. There's the Gitcoin token dropped in 2021, and there was around 14,000 holders at that time who were delegating to about 150 key decision makers in the community. And GTC is basically a governance token that allows you to govern the Gitcoin smart contracts on chain. And the Gitcoin smart contracts are basically the treasury. And then there's also Allo protocol, which is our capital allocation protocol that, there's a fee switch within the protocol that is governed by the GTC holders. And then there's the treasuries that are governed by the GTC holders. And there's active discussions on gov.gitcoin.co about how to evolve this into the future. But the short answer to your question is just governing both Allo protocol and the treasury.
Okay, then let's maybe dive into Allo protocol, because kind of like the Gitcoin 2.0 vision is kind of like a 3-tiered stack with the Allo protocol at the bottom or top, however way you look at it. So talk us through that.
where I'll start is that we built Gitcoin 1.0 totally wrong, and I just want to like raise my hand in front of your audience and say I built it centralized and monolithic, and I have seen the light, and modular and decentralized is the way to go. So Gitcoin 1.0 was a centralized monolith. It was hosted on a AWS server in Oregon that I set up, and Gitcoin 2.0 is hosted on Ethereum and on IPFS. So hooray, our public goods funding mechanisms are decentralized now. We are eating our decentralized vegetables. So basically, this is Allo protocol is a modular suite of smart contracts that allows people to basically, it's easily forkable, so anyone can fork Gitcoin grants and build their own capital allocation mechanism into it. But if you don't care about coding, you can just basically use this tool called Gitcoin Grant Stack, which is the web application that allows anyone to run a Gitcoin grants in their community. So basically, what we're allowing everyone to do is run a QF round permissionlessly without any help from us. So Gitcoin 1.0 was all about fishing for you. Gitcoin 2.0 is teaching you to fish. We've now got a community of 50 to 100 round operators that are trained to run Gitcoin grants rounds in your community. And that's what we call the program layer. It's the social layer. People who understand how to run QF rounds in various EVM-based communities. And they are building these programs on top of Gitcoin Grant Stack, which is the application that anyone can use to run a QF round and a retro PGF round. And then that's all built on Allo protocol, which is sort of the development layer underneath of it. So I think this architecture is quite elegant because it allows us to go deep on each of the capital allocation tools and build the best tool for that design space. But it allows us to go broad and build many different types of capital allocation tools into the community. So that's a little bit about the architecture of Gitcoin 2.0.
Can I add modules to that? So basically, if I feel like a particular distribution mechanism is definitely missing, can I build that and have it integrated into that stack?
Yep. So if you don't have coding skills, you can go to gitcoin.co/grantstack, click on the GitHub, open up a new issue, and make a suggestion for a capital allocation strategy. If you are a software developer, what you can do is you can fork Allo and GrantStack, and you can augment the capital allocation strategies and then PR it back into GrantStack. So what I think is really one of the most powerful things about open source is the ability to accept contributions from all over the place. And my goal for Gitcoin 2.0 is I want to do for capital allocation what OpenZeppelin has done for ERC20 tokens. And what I mean by that is this. When I was a software developer who was just entering the space and wanted to mess around with something at a hackathon for a weekend, I would just pull ERC20 Solidity contracts out of OpenZeppelin's repository, and I knew they were well documented and they were audited, and I could just take that money Lego ERC20 token and pull it into my app. And that way I could build what my app actually needed to do instead of reinventing the wheel of ERC20 for every app that I'm building. We want to do that for capital allocation. I imagine a future in which anyone in a hackathon, at an ETH Global hackathon in the future, can pull the power of Gitcoin grants into their application for that weekend, and they can instantly have a quadratic funding strategy or a retroactive public goods funding strategy that they know is documented and audited. And I think that what this is we want to build the money Legos for capital allocation on the EVM based stack, and what that's going to do is propel the community forward in distributing the capital that exists in all of these different tokenized treasuries across the space. And so, setting the Schelling point for capital allocation contracts and making those contracts available to any hacker in the space who wants to build QF or retro PGF or conviction voting or whatever it is into their application in the future. So that's the final North Star. We're not quite there yet. Still working on making the docs good, still making the contracts really understandable. But yeah, we believe in a future in which anyone can take the power of Gitcoin grants and put it into their application. And that's enabled by this new modular architecture that we presented in Gitcoin 2.0.
You said that the fee switch for the Allo protocol is triggered by the Gitcoin token. Tell us about the fees that you may introduce.
Yeah, I'd say that right now we're really just focused on providing as much value as possible. Allo protocol is being used in dozens of places right now. We think that there could be hundreds, thousands of DAOs that are using Allo protocol and could benefit from these capital allocation tools right now. And right now we are accepting payment and feedback because we just want to make sure that these tools are adopted and helping as many people as possible. There are no active plans to turn on the fee switch. I think it's really up to governance whether that's going to happen or not. And I think keep an eye on gov.gitcoin.co. But my constraints for actually activating the fee switch would be that it has to be done in a way that is positive sum with the communities that it serves. And I think that we're still exactly figuring out the path to financial sustainability for Gitcoin and how to balance the trade-offs with what that would mean for turning that on. So I guess that's a long way of saying it's up to governance. I don't know. Keep an eye on gov.gitcoin.co.
What's the sentiment about Gitcoin token holders? Because, I mean, in principle, it's like if you look at the market cap, it's kind of like probably on the order of 100 million or something. So to kind of have that kind of float, people probably believe that it'll be able to capture some of the value that it provides to other communities, right?
I mean, I think that the sentiment that I see expressed on gov.gitcoin.co, which is where, at least in theory, people are supposed to be expressing their sentiment about Gitcoin, is you guys need to get product adoption. So basically, Gitcoin DAO launched in 2021, and we're now in 2024. It took 2 years to rewrite the centralized monolithic stack to be decentralized and modular. And I think that in a space where attention is fickle and we're going to chase meme coins on the order of hours, not days, I think a lot of people have forgotten about Gitcoin. And that's fine. We didn't execute, and there was a pretty hard reset between 1.0 and 2.0. So I think that the focus right now is on building tools that are actually useful to people and getting those adoption. And I think like being a leader again in capital allocation. I think like in a lot of ways, Gitcoin 1.0 pioneered quadratic funding. And with the help of, obviously we didn't write the paper, Glenn, Vitalik, and Zoe wrote the paper, but we're pioneering the actual practice of using it. And, the game has changed. It's not just quadratic funding anymore. It's retroactive public goods funding. There's a bunch of different capital allocation tools and the reset from centralized and monolithic to decentralized and modular has necessitated a different approach in a new era of leadership. So, I think the honest answer to your question is that Gitcoin needs to lead again, and it needs to pioneer the space during a new era in which the game has changed. And the sentiment that I hear that I really want to respond to is making Gitcoin a market leader again. And that's what you'll see me pushing for at gov.gitcoin.co.
That's absolutely fair. So you recently deployed to a whole bunch of chains. How did you determine where to deploy to? I mean, obviously, it's clear that Ethereum mainnet was not the place to be anymore in light of the fees. But yeah, how did you decide where to take your bets?
Yeah, well, anyone can take Allo protocol and deploy it wherever they want. So that's the nice thing about being forkable and permissionless is that you don't have to rely on Kevin Owocki anymore. Gitcoin's going to deploy to any L2 that's legitimate and wants to fund what matters to its community. So right now we're seeing the most traction on Optimism and Arbitrum. Allo has also deployed to Celo, into ZK Sync, into Base, and wherever there's money that is going to be funding public goods and funding what matters to these communities, I think that we'll make sure that there is an Allo deployment to those chains. So I think we're all waiting to see where L2s are going to shake out, but it's pretty cheap to deploy the Allo contracts to a new chain in terms of time and gas costs. So we're going to go to as many L2s as there are communities that have treasuries that want to deploy them.
Yeah, makes total sense. You heavily rely on kind of like the future being DAO heavy for Gitcoin, right? Because kind of like allocating treasuries kind of like in a decentralized manner. This is very much a DAO mandate. How do you see the recent evolution of DAOs? Are you happy with where we are right now with DAOs, or do you think we need to push for getting to another place?
I think DAOs are a fascinating design space. I think DAOs are basically crypto multiplayer mode. What do we do when communities have to govern something together, have to push forward a movement together? And I also like Wynn said the word organization in decentralized autonomous organization. I think these are networks in a way, and that's just a totally different way of thinking. And it's going to take time for them to evolve. The corporate form evolved for 300, 400 years, something like that, from the East India Corporation to what we now know as the Delaware C Corp, or, I'm not sure what the equivalent is in Europe. But I think it's going to take decades of evolution for us to figure out the final form of DAOs, and I think that we can't rush it. I really like Moloch DAOs. I really like compound DAOs. I think that the Gnosis Safe is just an incredibly simple but powerful tool for helping communities work together. I'm excited about new primitives like HATS protocol. And, I think we can't force the evolution. I think we have to go through the painful parts, but also the beautiful parts of DAOs happening. And, what Gitcoin's trying to solve is like a very small portion of the DAO stack, which is capital allocation. And you're right, it does sort of depend on people having tokens that they want to deploy from their tokenized treasuries to the outer orbits of their communities. But, Gitcoin's kind of a bet on the EVM eating the world and tokenization eating the world. And on top of that, I know that people are going to want to fund what matters in their communities, and we just want to build the best stack for doing that. But maybe I could tease a little bit. I'm actually writing a book right now called How to DAO, which will be published with Penguin Random House as a publisher in October of this year. So really excited to explain the design space of DAOs to hopefully a more mainstream audience coming in the fall. And I think it's a really fascinating and exciting design space.
I had no idea about the book, but I'm going to push on this now. So what do you think is the single thing that should be changed for DAO that would have the most impact right now?
It's a hard question to answer, because asking about DAOs is like asking about, it's an extremely wide aperture. Asking about DAOs is like asking about organizations. Are we talking about a family? Are we talking about a nonprofit? Are we talking about a for-profit corporation? Are you talking about an NGO? Like, it's just like too wide of an aperture to even give a useful answer. So I'm sorry not to answer your question, but I think there's a bunch of little things that need to be made better. Yeah.
Okay, I'll specify. So in my view, the one thing that would do a lot if it were to be solved is kind of like the attention bandwidth problem, right? Kind of right now, when you actually look at the snapshots of DAOs, often it is votes on things that shouldn't be voted on. There's like people, basically quorums are not met left and right because people kind of disengage. Do you have an idea how to deal with the bandwidth problem, different decisions kind of on different scales for DAOs?
Yeah, I mean, my response to that would be, hey, what if there was a capital allocation tool that respected the voters' attention instead of assuming that they're spending tens of hours every day on the governance forums? So I think that like quadratic funding in a way sort of is that. With quadratic funding, you're taking a look at all the grants in a community that are doing stuff within that community and loading up your cart once per quarter. It takes 10 or 15 minutes. It feels more like an e-commerce experience. You check out and then you're done once a quarter. And so there's not a bunch of like governance proposals to really spend a lot of time debating back and forth on. And by the way, I'm sorry there's so much friction in your GG19 experience. I hope that GG20 is more is better for you. But my response to that is we need a capital allocation Swiss Army knife, and we need to have more tools that respect the user's attention, the voters' attention when they're allocating capital in these DAOs.
Yeah, and Kevin, I want to make clear that kind of I've given through Gitcoin through most of the rounds. I'm a huge fan. I think it's I just wanted I was frustrated because I think it's a really important tool and I want to see it just work.
Yeah. Well, I am back at Gitcoin. I was just affiliated for about a year and a half, and I think that Gitcoin was in the messy middle between 1.0 and 2.0. But if you have complaints about GG20, please tweet at me. I'm at Owaki on Twitter, and I read all the feedback, and we take it seriously. Sometimes even if you don't see it, and know that we're working hard to make the user experience better. We have made missteps. It is a hard design space, but each Gitcoin is deeply protopian. And by that I mean it gets better every quarter. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 2 steps back and 1 step forward. Especially between Gitcoin 1.0 and 2.0. But we are still here. We are still grinding, and we're going to make each Gitcoin grants round better than the last one.
Fantastic. So, tell our audience how to get involved with Gitcoin governance if they want to do so, how to contribute, I know there's an approval process for projects to kind of be whitelisted and so on. You rely heavily on volunteers for that. So if people if this resonates with people, where do they head?
Yep. So you can go to gitcoin.co, which is where you can find all the other good stuff. If you check out impact.gitcoin.co, that is the ticker for the amount of impact that Gitcoin has had. From the beginning of Gitcoin's entrance in the space, I've always been very focused on let's actually show the numbers, the tangible impact that Gitcoin is having. And I wanted to stand out from all the projects that were promising the world, but not actually delivering much. And impact.gitcoin.co is where you can go to see our latest impact numbers. As of 2024, March 2024, we've done $60 million worth of funding to public goods in the Ethereum ecosystem. You can go to gitcoin.co/discord if you want to join our Discord and get involved. Gov.gitcoin.co is the governance forum for Gitcoin. And you can also find us on Twitter at twitter.com/Gitcoin. Yeah, those are the links that I would expect that people could go and check out. And April 2024 is when Gitcoin Grants 20 is happening. So set a reminder, remember to check out in your Gitcoin cart, and send me a tweet after you do it and let me know if it sucked, then tell me it sucked. If you thought it was great, then tell me it was great. I'm twitter.com/Owaki. Frederique, thank you so much for having me on the Epicenter podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for coming on, Kevin. I'm looking forward to round 20.
All right. Thank you, Frida, for sharing the video.
Ecosystem at that point, all the projects.
And now we'll go back to our CEO, Dr. Macharia, for a few comments about the videos. As he does so, if anyone has any question, please feel free to ask. As I said, you can either ask through the raising your hand and asking through the audio, or you can also write it down in the chat. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Macharia.
Can you hear me? I think I'm muted. I don't know.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh yeah, what's up? Zoom has been misbehaving for me. Okay. Wow, that is Kevin Owaki. Now you all know the reason I wanted us to watch Kevin Owaki. Do you all know the reason? Well, because Kevin Owaki is the one who took that idea of quadratic funding from Vitalik very seriously and built Gitcoin. And then he has built a whole quadratic funding system. Why this is important to us, so we don't spend a lot of time on this, is he has described Gitcoin grant stack. Gitcoin grant stack, and we're going to use it. He said that that's a stack they have prepared for people who do not want, who don't know a lot about coding, which they can now take that stack and apply and put it on their website. Period. So we're going to study that Gitcoin grant stack, because we don't have to go again and that's for this Allo protocol. The Allo protocol is the one that's allocates money, allocates funds to different projects. So what I'm saying is that Kevin Awagi has done all the heavy lifting. And you see, and he's talking about using that technology. They have raised about $60 million for different projects. And so because we have a treasury of tokens, now we just need to take that Gitcoin grant stack and use it to point to the actual tokens themselves. And then the actual tokens can be used for quadratic funding. That's all. That's why we wanted to hear all that. But it's good for you guys to watch that video many times so we can understand what quadratic funding is all about. The real big deal about quadratic funding is it helps people to fund projects that really matter to them. And we know the projects that really matter to us are there on the ground, whether it comes to tree planting, whether it comes to healthcare, whether it comes to water, and that is what is going to happen. So I believe that so we understand this quadratic funding very, very well. We'll never have shortage of money because it's about fundraising. And I want to tell you that quadratic funding is the same Harambe we do every day, but on the blockchain, which is very, very, very powerful. What is beautiful about this quadratic funding is that there's something called matching pool. So when you get this thing organized, there's a pool of donors. Donors are already waiting there to fund any project. For example, if we say we're funding a tree planting, there's already a whole bunch of donors. And so long as you say we have raised $100 for this, then that money is going to get automatically allocated to that project, $100 for 100 people, each person contributing $1. So using the quadratic funding mechanism or algorithm, the money is allocated to the project. Well, that is the brief summary of it, so we don't stay too long. And I want to give the meeting back to you, but I hope you have all understood. If you didn't understand very well, Susan will share that link. It's already in our team folder, but can send to the Actuate Nation. So you understand quadratic funding. It's very important that everyone gets it. There's a lot more videos on quadratic funding in YouTube. Listen to them, because by understanding what quadratic funding is all about, that you get to know this new type of Harambe. They are more simplified simplified explanations. But I wanted you to hear it from Kevin Aoki. And see, Kevin said that there are 5 distinct things they have created. There's the quadratic funding itself, and then there's retroactive public good funding, and then there's conviction funding, which they can even raise something as little as $500. All these are different things that are going to be available for us for mobilizing money on the ground as you go along. So it's very important that we all get very, very well educated. That's really why I wanted us to watch Kevin Aoki describing the 2.0. That's Gitcoin 2.0. All right, so back to you, Baker.
Thank you, Doc, for those insights. And also, I would like to mention something that I also heard. Kevin mentioned that I found to be interesting, as most projects sometimes that you end up funding ends up not having the results you wanted. So he mentioned something retroactive public good funding, which it gives funding to the projects that have already shown their value to the community. So in a way, it's sort of seeing performance levels and efficiency and effectiveness of those type of projects. So it's also instilling trust in people. So when people see that your project is actually doing good, that's when they're more inclined to fund it. So that's a concept that I found interesting there. So if anyone has any questions, thoughts, views, comments, please feel free to ask now. I'm gonna give a few minutes for everyone to collect themselves and ask a question if they do have one. Meanwhile, I would like to also invite Augustine to give us summit announcements. Augustine, welcome. Augustine?
Hmm.
You are muted if you're having issues. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, we can hear you now.
okay. Sorry. Hello everyone, and thank you so much, Linda, and thank you so much, Doc, and also thank you so much, everyone, for making time this evening to join us. So yeah, my name is Augustine, and I'm the coordinator of the Actuate Pre-Post on Nairobi Summit, and I would love to just remind you about our conference, our summit. That we are really organizing a summit, as we all know, which is expected to take place this coming December 2024 from 3rd to 6th at Kenyatta University main campus. Yeah, and the theme of our summit is using AI, blockchain technology, and decentralized finance to improve health and human development. Yeah, so this summit, we are aiming to bring people together from health sector, those who are passionate about human development, artificial intelligence communities, blockchain technology, and centralized finance organizations to have a conversation about how we can leverage these technologies to improve human development and also create some good conditions um, for a very healthy future, whereby people can be able to access health, quality health, affordable health, and even accessible in terms of distance. So that is the purpose of our summit, and we are looking forward to have you guys and also other people across the globe coming, and we can people can come as attendees, and when you visit our website you'll see the attendees registration link. You can just learn more about it. What are the benefits of becoming an attendee? Of course, you will get to understand what how these technologies, you will get to understand, get insights of these technologies and how they can improve human and health development. Also, of course, now it's a good platform for you to network and many more other benefits that are highlighted in our website. The other category is speakers, and you can come, people can come as speakers to talk about how with artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and decentralized finance can improve health or even human development, whichever the topic you have, but it must be centered around the three technologies, yeah, or even one of them, or what you can say. But so speakers. So you can be a speaker, and the registration is ongoing. There are few slots remaining. So ensure you participate, you reach out, you you know come with your own thing. Ensure you just be keen and show up. Let's be aggressive and show up. Let's be curious on these things. Yeah, reach out, ask what, and now you will get a guidance, and you can submit your topic. You can be a speaker. Doesn't have to be a professional. You can be a speaker. Information is all over there, so there's no limitation. Yeah. We have another category of exhibitors, and those are organizations or even individuals who want to showcase their product or services. There is an exhibition booth in our summit, and they can come and showcase how their products functions and get attention from these global or even industry leaders. And the booth is going at $1,000. And you go to, again, in our website, you will be able to understand all those and the procedure of applying. So let's get these organizations tell them about this word, that they can come and showcase their products also. They can come as speakers, they can come, they can, if they also have products to showcase, there's exhibition booth for them. And yes, now the other category is sponsors. You see, now sponsors are, if organizations want to, leave their legacy and, contribute bigger in our summit, they are welcomed as sponsors, and they can buy the first package, which is Diamond, which is going at $10,000, or buy Platinum, which is going at $7,500, or buy Gold, which is going at $5,000, or buy Silver, which is going at $3,000, or even Bronze, which is going at $1,000. And when you invite them, the one who invited them, you get 5% commission of the package that you sold. So that challenge is still ongoing, and the progress is so positive. Speakers are there. We are getting pharmaceutical companies' attention. We are getting artificial intelligence companies' attention. It's going international. It's going everywhere. So you should just be curious, join us. The challenge is still there. We don't want to leave anyone behind. We're just being honest. We want everyone to be in this journey. And it's not something you feel like, no, let's just be curious and identify opportunities. Be curious about things in life and identify opportunities, and you will be able to see how things will happen in your life. Yeah, these things are there. It's not me saying how things will happen in your life. I'm not convincing, I'm not paying. I'm just saying, let's show up, let's be aggressive. We want everyone to be at the forefront of this summit. This thing is everyone. It's our thing. It's our community thing. Actually, it's a community. It's not just it's more than an organization. It's a community, and co-creation is our principles. We are centered around there. We empower everybody. We move together. So also you can come as a poster presenter, and your poster presentation criteria. The poster presentation criteria is also highlighted in our website. Just go click the link and you'll be able to understand. But in just a brief, the poster presentation must uphold or must recognize the three technologies: artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and decentralized finance mechanisms, and how they can improve human or even health in Africa and beyond. So that is it, and I'm saying the stakeholders again: artificial intelligence communities, healthcare professionals, and pharmaceutical companies, businesses, even government entities. Let's engage. We are all, they are there. We interact with them. Let's just continue spreading this word. And yes, I just said healthcare professionals and speakers. So doctors, biomedical people who are very passionate about biomedicine, people who are very passionate about medicine itself, let's invite these doctors. I know right now a lot of universities, people are in attachment. We are engaging with these people, so let's spread the word. Let's get them on board. Tell them about this this opportunity that is waiting them. Yes, so that is it, and I don't have much. And let's continue working together. Let's reach out. Let's be present. Let's participate. Let's belong. And but I am so much optimistic that we are going to succeed together. So thank you so much, and back to you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Augustine. And I'm still not seeing any questions, so I'm going to assume everybody has enough clarity on the matters discussed today. So I'm going to post the form, today's form. For those who don't know, this is an attendance form so that we can allocate tokens at the end of the month. And the form is in the chats. I'm going to give 5 minutes to fill it out. So at 9:26, the form shall be closed. If anyone has any questions about the form, please let me know, or any difficulties they are facing, please let me know. If you manage to fill out the form, the meeting is now adjourned.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if I'm audible.
You're audible.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. Well, you'll find about the summit. The summit is very, very good. I'm very happy, optimistic about it. Quite a number of doctors have signed up. So we already have workshops taken up. And we have workshops on cancer, that one is taken. We have workshop on mental health, that one is taken. We have workshop on what, yeah, I can't remember. So quite a number of workshops are already taken up, meaning that there are people who are going to be running those workshops, even women. Workshop on African women is also already taken. And that means that the attendance, and then of course, we have quite a number of speakers, very fascinating speakers. If you go to our website, you can see the list of speakers who have actually even submitted their abstracts. So that in the next few days, the speakers list will be full. But that still gives you opportunity to present a poster, to participate in a poster competition. Yeah, it's getting much more fascinating every day. Yeah, and so because the team is working very hard to invite people out there, and so as Augustine said, we have 3 major categories of people, disciplines. Let's say 4. That's blockchain, decentralized finance. That is one category. Then artificial intelligence, and we call those people information scientists. And then on the other side, we have people in health, global health. Global and healthcare is a very big, diverse, big spectrum area because there's so many specialties in healthcare. And then we have people in human development. Human development is anything you can do to advance human life, which means even selling potatoes and spinach, which we're talking about entrepreneurship. So there's so much to do to participate. And we want to, and of course, these are people we are invited within African continent, but also internationally. So we'll be getting some people coming from the international scene. And what will be most fascinating is to draw attention to these big wig developers like Kevin Walking to come to Nairobi. And if we do a very good job in quadratic funding, you can be certain that that Kevin will be in Nairobi as well, or maybe some of his representative. And even that retroactive public good funding was built by Bob Dresser of Optimism Foundation. And so we would like all of them to come because in service of global health. Yeah, so we're going to work very hard, without ceasing to find them until they come to Nairobi so that we can have a huge festival for global health. Okay, first of all, for everyone for global health, and we build the economy that way. All right, those are the last things I would like to say, and then see you again next week. Let's continue diving deeper and deeper in this quadratic funding. So, Becca, this is the first lesson for the second, the cluster 2 for environmental health.
This for the cohort 2.
Yeah.
This is our 5th session for the cohort 2, but
fifth session, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you say. All right, so we're going to be digging deeper into quadratic funding. As you can see, there's so much to unpack. For us to understand, it's very, very important that we get to understand this in detail, because as I say, it's the same way we do Harambe, but this is Harambe on the blockchain. So long as you understand the technology, you're going to find it very easy. As Kevin was saying, that to participate, they have simplified the technology such that you don't need to push the button too many times. It's pushing the button only once or twice, and then you're done. So it is user friendly, easy to use. That's what we are going to be building over the month of July and August. Something easy that can be accessible to everyone. So it's not complicated. The technology sounds very complicated, but it's very, very simplified because Kevin has been hard at work with his team at the GitCon. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for me. And thank you so much, everyone, for the meeting today. Have a good one.
thank you. Have a good one as well. So it's 9:26. I'm assuming everybody has filled out the form. If no one, if some of you have not filled out the form, please voice that now, because I am ending the meeting and closing the forms. I'll take that as a as a yes. So have a good night, everyone.